My name is Stuart Beckman. I don't really see this as a legal issue. As this gentleman has pointed out, the Supreme Court has ruled on it and decided it was not unconstitutional to have a phrase like this. But I do very much feel that this is a very moral issue and deals with the very values of American society and goes against those values. Slogan like this is all about dividing Americans, as opposed to e pluribus unum, which is, I haven't heard any reason to think that that's an invalid value, American value, but certainly it brings America together, as they had to do with the Founding Fathers with the 13 colonies. A phrase like "In God We Trust" is designed to divide Americans, to say, if you do not trust in God, you're not one of us. You're not to be represented. You're not to be recognized. It drives us to be invisible, those of us who may not trust in a God. And that seems so contrary to what the values I was taught growing up in school that the United States stood for, of tolerance, of diversity, of freedom of conscience, of inclusivity. This value, this slogan of "In God We Trust," is very powerful and not in a good way. To me, it seems no different than what we saw before the Civil Rights Movement in the Jim Crow South, when we saw signs that said blacks, whites. Those signs were legal. Those signs were promoted by the city councils, by the state government. It was all legal, but was it moral? We decided as a country that that really wasn't. It made two classes of citizens: those that were recognized, given full rights of equality, life, liberty, and happiness, and then there were the others. That's what "In God We Trust" does in this society. And it's a war slogan. It was adopted to fight and divide us from our enemies during the Cold War. Well, that war's been over for 20 years now, and yet this is still hanging around, excluding now only Americans from each other. I find that incredibly unethical, incredibly immoral, and incredibly contrary to the values I grew up with as an American. Now, I understand that solutions like this are sometimes offered because there are problems to be solved. And I'm sorry that there isn't someone on the panel today to represent the pro side, so I'll have to lean on you a little bit here. But I am wondering what problem this measure is supposed to be solving. And what problem is it supposed to be solving that wouldn't be solved with a slogan like "E pluribus unum"? Or that wouldn't be solved with the fact that "In God We Trust" is on every dollar bill we have and has been for decades? What problem did that not solve that this slogan in City Hall is supposed to solve? That's my question. Thank you.
Would either of you like to field that, or, sir, would you like to jump back up?
It is on the money, and it has been since the 19th century. And by the way, where are you from, sir? What city? Los Angeles. Okay. And it's okay. We have out-of-town folks here. Villa Park's a little community. I don't know if it's a microcosm of Southern California. I don't know. I don't think it is. It's fairly conservative. Prop AA is going to pass overwhelmingly. And I will still respect everybody's view to disbelieve and even to have this conversation. And I like "E pluribus unum." I think that's a great motto. Just that the one on the ballot that I didn't ask, but I did write the argument in favor of it, happens to be "In God We Trust." It's the national motto. But to say it's divisive, I think we're bordering on histrionics here. Divisive, that it's on our money? Has it ever divided us? So just in response to that, I think in all fairness, we're blowing it a bit out of proportion. I mean, this is the type of thing where we decide about this, we put it to the vote, and we go and have a beer afterwards. That's the way this should be, that we work and live together in this community. We're Americans. But just so happens it's part of our tradition, which the court has recognized. We can express that patriotic theme, and it doesn't have to be a theistic pronouncement. It can be a symbolic, historical reflection of what gave impetus to found this country, which was religious freedom. So you don't have to figure out who the God is who we're trusting in. I've never had to try to figure that out off my money, but we can still affirm that, yeah, in God we trust. And I think the latest poll that I saw, I think it was 2003, the Gallup poll said over 90% of Americans are fine with the motto "In God We Trust" on our money. So And I don't mean to step on the minority's views who dissent to that, but to not allow the majority to continue to express a historic motto, I think that's why it's on the ballot, and everybody's free that lives in Villa Park to vote it down, but I'm voting for it, and if people are going to use it divisively, I'll be the first one to say that's not the intent of it, and I'll be the first one to affirm your right to disbelieve, because we have a big tent in this country for atheists, and et cetera, and we can persuade each other, and this is the format to do that, the forum to say, hey, here's why, and I hope we can always shed more light than heat in the process, and I hope everybody's listening. I'm listening, and I like some of the things I'm hearing, and I factor those things in. So hey, let's consider that in that context, and I don't see this being a divisive issue. I see it being something that it's part of the public discussion that needs to happen.
See, we have a problem of line drawing. So I think that in God We Trust on the money is divisive, as it is in the pledge, because it signals to the American people that patriotism has a greater pedigree if it's tethered to a religious belief system, and that itself is divisive. So the fact that people want to water down the phrase God to mean a historical concept as opposed to a supernatural being, I think is itself problematic. It would be problematic for the religious. I remember the arguments against removing under God under the Pledge of Allegiance. Those on the other side said, essentially, leave it in because it doesn't mean what it says it means. It doesn't mean a real deity. It just means some kind of watered-down historical reference. I also don't think that the government should be in the business of diluting the word God to such a degree that it essentially loses meaning, because then diluting theological concepts just so you can sneak it in to some kind of law is also a dead end. But then we would also have to ask ourselves, at what point does a theological expression become unconstitutional? So let's say that the city of Birmingham, Alabama, had a measure that would say that if it passed by the voters, no person who is known not to believe in God can be employed in the city. Well, would that then cross the line? Or if somebody said, no person known to be gay can be an employee of this city. Or if we go back to a former darker time where it said, no person who does not affirm a belief in a supernatural being can testify in court. So are we going to just say that the Establishment Clause allows the expression of a watered-down deity, or can government go further in siding with religion against non-belief? These are very delicate questions, and I think the best solution is government neutrality. Again, if somebody had on the ballot in the city to put over that desk there with the city council members, in No God Do We Trust, I would oppose it equally. My goal is neutrality, so we're all equal before the law and equal before the law's sentiments.
Your point that you made about the other motto that we have, E pluribus unum, out of many one, that is what reflects the diversity of our culture. They meant it a little differently back when they were first saying it, but it means basically we're one people.